welcome to this week's What's for Dinner video. My name is Ashley. I'm going to be showing you 3 different meals I made this past week. I don't always follow recipes exactly, but if you're interested, I've linked some similar recipes down below. The first dinner I'm going to be showing you, I made some spaghetti with meat sauce and some green beans. So I'm starting out with my ground beef. I am just cooking up a little bit over 1 pound of ground beef. Just going to cook this all the way through and then drain out the excess oil. So once I drained out as much grease as I could, I took a paper towel with some tongs and I'm just going to dab in the pan to kind of help absorb the excess grease. So next I'm going to begin seasoning up the meat. I'm going to use some onion powder, some garlic powder, some Italian seasoning, pepper, and some salt. I also added in a couple red pepper flakes just to give it a little bit of a kick. I'm going to stir this into the meat and then let these flavors kind of cook into the meat before I add in my tomato sauce. So next I'm going to add in some crushed up tomatoes in puree. I don't really have exact measurements. I kind of eyeball everything and add whatever else that I need. So next I'm going to add in some water. I'm just going to add, I think, half cups at a time. And then I'm going to add in some bouillon flavoring. I am making a lot of sauce because I am making 1 full box of pasta, and this will just go over the top of the pasta. So next I'm going to add in a little bit of a separate can of tomato sauce, kind of small amounts, and stir that in. So I'm going to add a tad bit more water and a tomato bouillon flavoring. So once that I have kind of the amount of sauce that I want, I'm just going to work on finishing seasoning it. So I'm just going to add some more Italian seasoning, garlic powder, salt, and kind of whatever else I feel like the flavor needs. So once I'm done working on my meat sauce and I have the flavor just right, I'm going to cover this, bring it up to a rapid simmer, and then I'm going to throw the lid on it and turn the heat down. So I let this simmer on low for about 30 minutes to really bring out the flavors. So when it was almost time to eat, I went ahead and seasoned up my green beans. I just sprayed a little bit of olive oil spray. I'm using some salt, some Italian seasoning, and some garlic powder. And then this went in the oven at 350 until they were done. This is how everything looked when it was done. Just a nice spaghetti meal, and I was definitely very proud of it. The next dinner I'm going to be showing you was definitely my favorite meal of the week. It was cream cheese, queso, chicken enchiladas. So I'm starting out with a couple chicken breasts that I cooked up in my Instant Pot. Now I'm just going to shred them with a little bit of the juice from the pot. I like to make sure I spoon a little bit of the juice because shredded chicken does absorb liquid and that keeps it nice and juicy. Next, I'm going to add in about 1/3 of a block of the cream cheese. I'm just going to mix that with the chicken to create a creamy chicken base. And then I'm going to season the chicken a little bit more with some taco seasoning, cumin, onion powder. And of course, I'm going to add in a handful of cheese to the enchilada mixture. So next I'm going to work on making the sauce. It is kind of like a queso. I didn't really have an entire idea of how I was going to make the sauce. I just kind of went with it, and that's what I love about kind of knowing how to cook, is adding things and being able to create your own sauce. So I'm starting out by creating just a roux, and this will help be a thickener for the sauce. It is just some butter and some flour. So I'm going to season the roux a little bit. I want to have some of those Mexican flavors, so I'm using some taco seasoning, cumin, onion powder. So I'm just going to let that cook a little bit and then I'll add my liquid. So for my liquid, I'm going to use some water and chicken bouillon powder to make some chicken broth. I'm going to stir this in, and then I will add in my cream cheese to melt. So I'm going to use the rest of that same block of cream cheese. I'm just going to stir this in until it kind of starts to melt, and then I will add a little bit of heavy whipping cream. I just think cream cheese adds such good flavor to just about anything. It's one of my favorite ingredients. So next I'm just going to add in my heavy whipping cream, and this is just going to help thin out the sauce and make it just a little bit more creamy. I definitely taste as I go because I want to make sure the flavors are just right. So I'm going to season it just a little bit more because I think it needed it. This sauce was honestly so good. It really was just like a queso. Once we were done with using the sauce, we did use some chips to eat it. So one tip that I've learned for enchiladas is to kind of fry it just a little bit when you're going to add a heavy creamy base on top, because you don't want the tortillas to be super soggy. The fried tortilla just gives it a little bit more of an edge. So I just repeated the step for all of my tortillas. So next I'm going to work on assembling the enchiladas. I'm first going to lay just a little bit of the sauce on the bottom so it doesn't stick. So next I'm going to work on rolling up my enchiladas. I'm just going to use my hands for all of it, scoop a little bit into the corn tortilla, roll it up and place it seam side down. So I'm just going to repeat the step for all my enchiladas until my entire dish is filled. I was already so excited to eat this at this point because I knew how good this was going to be. Once I had finished rolling them up, I just went ahead and poured that queso sauce all over the enchiladas. You want to make sure you do cover basically every part of the enchilada so nothing burns and everything is nice and saucy. So the last step to assembling the enchiladas is just to sprinkle some cheese on top. I'm just using a Mexican shredded blend and making sure I cover each enchilada with that cheese, and then I bake this uncovered at 375 for about 20 minutes. This is how everything looked when it was done. I just served it with a side salad and some guacamole. This was definitely a 10-10. The last dinner I'm going to be showing you, I made some chicken burrito bowls with white rice, chicken, corn, pinto beans, lettuce, and some toppings. So I'm starting out with my chicken breast. I am just cooking up whatever I had left for the week. Just going to butterfly these in half because I like to work with thin pieces of chicken. So I'm going to marinate this chicken in some chipotles and adobo sauce. I'm kind of replicating the chipotle burrito bowls in a way. So I'm just using a couple of the chipotles. I'm just going to cut these up as fine as I can. I am doing that on the same cutting board as the chicken because this is just going straight into the chicken. Next, I'm going to pour out some of that chipotle and adobo sauce. It's just adobo sauce. And I'm just going to use a little bit of oil to help marinate the chicken, and I'm going to use my hands and kind of coat every part of the chicken. So I do want to make sure I still season the chicken to add still some good flavor. I'm using just some cumin, garlic powder, onion powder, salt, everything. Again, I'm just going to give this a nice toss with my hands. There was like no other way to do this, so. So next I'm going to grill up the chicken in a little bit of oil. I have this set on medium heat. I'm just going to lay 3 pieces of chicken, grill these on both sides. At the same time, I do have my white rice cooking. So once they were nice and browned up on the other side, I just flip them over, and then I'm going to throw a lid on top because I like to do this to keep the heat and keep the chicken nice and juicy. Once the chicken was done, I just removed it to the clean cutting board, let that rest, and then I worked on the rest of my chicken. I also did warm up my pinto beans and corn in the microwave. So the last step is to make some homemade guac, of course. So I'm just going to use a couple avocados that I had, mash them up, and make some homemade guacamole. I always explain this. I just use some lime juice, garlic salt, onion powder, and pepper, and that's good enough for me. This is how everything looked when it was done. Just a nice fresh burrito bowl. I love these, and I love to eat these with chips as well. Thank you so much for watching this week's What's for Dinner video. Make sure you come back next week for another one.